So one of the common practices that producers usually discuss or have questions about with a lot of county educators is broadleaf herbicides and their effectiveness. So, and that's major, you know, the one thing we always tell producers is a pound of weeds could have been a pound of grass. So herbicides are very economical in boosting forage production, good quality forage, and yet reducing additional expenses in hay and supplementation later on. One of the things we've seen here in the last few years is pregnated or coated fertilizer, and it being pregnated or coated with a herbicide. And I've got Brian back with me to discuss some of these herbicide options that are in fertilizer treatments. Maybe you can tell us what some of the products that are being used and how much has to be applied, because I know there's a threshold to be effective with that. So Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, probably the most common product that we're seeing use of right now would be the use of Grazon Next HL, marketed by Corteva. It's a mixture of 2,4-D and aminopyrrolid. And the thing to remember is when we're putting out herbicide impregnated or herbicide coated fertilizer, we're not getting a whole lot of activity from those foliar type herbicides such as 2,4-D. Most of it is from residual activity in the soil and root uptake from that broadleaf weed. So again, we've got to have some rainfall to activate that. Usually a 1/4 inch will move both the nutrients from the fertilizer and the herbicide into the root zone. Then we could start to see some control on that weed there. Another herbicide that's labeled for use impregnated on dry fertilizer is chaparral. And another one that's a newer product that's out from Corteva right now is Duracor. So again, those are 3 of the herbicides that you could pick to have coated onto fertilizer and put out. The rates of Grazon Next HL that we're seeing is somewhere from 1.5 to 2.1 pints. Typically a 2 pint per acre rate is chosen. That gives us a good broad spectrum control of both annual and wheat perennial weeds. And that needs to be applied in 200 pounds of dry fertilizer product per acre. And you've got some questions on that. Why do I have to do 200 pounds? And the reason is, if you think about an application of those small little fertilizer prills, 200 pounds puts the prills close enough together that as we dissolve them, it makes a blanket of that herbicide or that active ingredient that prevents weeds from possibly coming up through that blanket application. If we was to step down to 100 pounds or even 75 pounds of product, the prills are far enough away from each other that we could actually get some weeds make it up through that barrier, so to speak. So again, that's why they do recommend 200 pounds of product minimum. That could be urea, diammonium phosphate, potash, or a combination of those 3, just as long as you're getting enough product out there to create that barrier.
So a 200-pound minimum of fertilizer application is required to get adequate control. What levels of control are we going to see, and does it control all species?
Good questions, good questions. For most of our really common pasture weeds that we fight, so our ragweed species, which are annuals except for western ragweed's a wheat perennial, for bitter sneezeweed and broomweed, for cuckleburr and woolly croton, and a lot of those easy to control annual weeds, it does a wonderful job when we put it on, say, early May, when we would normally be out wanting to spray a foliar product. So again, we're talking, anywhere from 2 to 8 inch weeds, it's going to do a great job on those species. Now, again, even looking at Corteva product literature, as it gets mature, as those weeds get into that reproductive growth stage, you're probably going to lose some control on a lot of those species, and they do recommend maybe looking at a foliar spray. We see the same thing on our OSU research trials. And definitely if a producer has perennial type pasture weeds, Carolina horse nettle, silverleaf nightshade, maybe ironweed, something like that, we would want to look at a foliar application because we know we're going to get better root kill, and most of those weeds are more effectively controlled when we wait until reproductive growth. And again, that's just too late to get enough root uptake from those plants to give us good root kill. So that's where we'd recommend going back to a foliar product.
So the 200-pound application of fertilizer mix with the treated or impregnated treated fertilizer, that's going to give you good enough coverage to get adequate control, but it's not going to be 100%. Now, The length, you say ideally we're going to apply this fertilizer about the 1st of May. Could be a little earlier depending on the way climate is and if weeds have germinated. We're still shooting for the ideal time to apply it at about a 4-inch height of weeds?
Yes, I would still shoot to be in a very young vegetative, actively growing state on those weeds, and that typically corresponds with a good time to get fertilizer nutrients down too when our warm season grasses are starting to actively grow. And as you can see behind us here, this is a field where we've applied that very treatment here at Perkins Research Station. You'll see a few broadleaf weeds here and there, but again, we did a really good job of picking up the majority of those. And again, you mentioned at the very beginning of this, we have always said you kill a pound of weeds, you tend to get a pound of grass in replacement. With this strategy, because you're also putting nutrients down at the same time, we tend to get about a 3-fold increase in our grass production compared to not using fertilizer at all.
But foliar applications of liquid is still going to be a necessity with some species.
It is.
Okay, so this fertilizer application with treated or impregnated fertilizer, the residual effect, how long is that residual going to last for us if we apply it, say, May 1 application date?
Okay, well that's a good question. It's a little harder to put our finger on the exact answer, but very dependent on climate. What we tend to see is if we're in a very high rainfall year like 2020 has been, the residual activity of that herbicide is shorter than if we tended to be a little drier. So that herbicide's broken down by warm weather, moisture, and microbes in the soil. And again, we should expect somewhere at least 45 days of activity from that product. A lot of times we can get upwards of 90 days activity on that product on our normal kind of central part of Oklahoma weather patterns that we get early summer.
But the main factor that's maybe decreasing that is going to be our rainfall that we receive
Rainfall would be the big
after
one.
application.
Yep.
All right.
And one other thing I'd like to say, you know, I think the reason that it's so enticing to a lot of producers to use this strategy is maybe they don't have that herbicide sprayer that they can go out there and spray with. And this really gives them an opportunity to have that one-pass solution across their field. When we look at the economics of it, it's not that it's necessarily saving you a tremendous amount of money in the long run. What it does save you though as a producer is time, and it saves you that extra pass compared to running a fertilizer buggy and that spray rig across the same field. So it is a good tool to have in the toolbox.
If they're having to hire somebody to make both applications, it is a savings to some.
Sure.
And convenience does cost. It is convenience. Many producers have off-farm jobs, so that convenience is does have a value to it. Not a cure-all, but another tool to put in the toolbox.
Great tool, especially for the weeds that most producers fight, just common pasture weeds of Oklahoma.
All right. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that about the impregnated or treated or coated fertilizer with the herbicide. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that input that you had on the treated. We do have a question of it. It talks about chemical drift. So I'm guessing with this dry herbicide, unless your applicator gets pretty wide on the fences, you're going to have minimal drift concerns with any of these products.
Yeah, particle drift, of course, is going to be, resulting in where you throw those sprills to, as you said, Nathan. With the Grazon Next product, there is a potential for some volatilization because there is a 2,4-D component in that. It is 2,4-D amine. It's not an ester formulation, which helps some. But, if you've got neighbors right on the fence with tomatoes or grapes or something that you're really concerned about, that's where I might look at a couple of these other products that we also mentioned there. The Chaparral, which is basically metsulfuron methyl and aminopyrrolide, would have zero volatilization. So that would be an option for you, as well as that new product, that DuraCore product. It has no phenoxy-based herbicide in it either. So that would probably be a smarter move to use one of those instead of the Grazon Next HL. Good question.
All right, Brian, I appreciate it. I know, like we said, it's just another option that producers may have. It may fit certain situations, but others it may not work so well. So we just wanted to prove the fact that how effective it was, and so we appreciate what you're doing with that.
So that's the end of our footage. I don't leave me yet because I have a little bit. I want to remind everybody about all the handouts. They're going to be sent to you through email here shortly. At the conclusion of this, there will be evaluation. And we ask that you fill that out. That helps us answer questions and address concerns that best fit producers across the state. That's what we're trying to do. We will have this has been recorded and it will be posted. We will share that with you at a later time where this recording is going to be posted. And for all of y'all that have registered and enrolled and stayed with us, I had a sponsor come to me, the Stillwater Chamber of Commerce Ag Committee, and they gave me some money. So all of those of you that have attended and fill out the evaluation, send it back to us, everybody get a free soil test. So there's your free gift for the day. Want to thank everybody. Want to thank all the support team that I mentioned at the beginning. Our speakers, Dr. Roccatelli, Brian Pugh, greatly appreciate that. I want to leave you with a quote from Vince Lombardi. Most people fail not because of lack of desire, because of lack of commitment. And through the research that we've seen and some of these demonstrations, if you commit to it, it has proven that it will save you some money. So I hope you remember that quote from Vince Lombardi. I want to thank you again for being a part of us. Brian, we do have another question that's popped up. Any research on controlled burns and Bermuda grass hay meeting? Management. I'm trying to read. Okay.
I don't know that we have any hard data here from OSU, but actually there is a really good fact sheet I've used before. I believe it's Alabama Cooperative Extension has done quite a bit of extensive work with prescribed fire use in Bermuda, mainly to remove thatch early in the season. And whatever county you're in, I guess we could try to get you some information on that. Nathan, I'm not sure if we can figure out where he's at, but we can probably make that part of our attachment too, if you're willing to do that.
Okay, we'll do our best to do that.
I'll make myself a note here.
All right. All right. So Dr. Roccatelli, we've got a question for you. Have you planted any alfalfa plots in no-till?
No, I didn't try any no-till with alfalfa. Always, I really make a very good seed bed for that. So honestly, I don't know exactly how to tackle that question now. I had seen a producer that called me and he had tried no-till in the past with alfalfa, but he was not so successful on the test. That doesn't mean that's not possible. That means that to be honest, we still need to investigate that and see how it goes. Brian, had you run through any producer working with no-till on alfalfa?
No, fairly limited. I have a couple producers that have done that. But again, you know, they've had complete burn down at time of planting. So, I mean, it's not necessarily sod seeded.
All right. Sounds like a new project to have.
Yep.
I know K-State did some work on that quite a few years ago.
Okay.
And so there may be some stuff there. They were no-tilling it into wheat stubble. So I don't know if they've done anything recently. You can check with your counterpart up there that you work. I know you work closely with.
Okay, Dr. Roccatelli, what are your thoughts related to the sustainability of reduced lignin alfalfa?
Yes, I had heard of rumors about the extendability of that they could lodge, but so far in the 2 locations that I had, I didn't experience any problems with extendability. With like so far they are behaving pretty much as a conventional one on all that. I don't see any problem so far.